Hello, welcome to the stream. I will be animating things today. Just finish posting this. So I can hear myself talk. Hello! Welcome. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing today, I'm going to be recording some footage for how to animate smoothly, because I get a lot of comments on how smooth my animations are. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration about how to do that kind of stuff. How to make things smooth. Yeah. Nightbot online. Yay, Nightbot is online. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna be just drawing some things. Let me actually get my script up so I make sure I cover the right stuff. Let's see. I should also put in a color card. So also, one other thing to note, and I will get around to a CSP tutorial eventually, but one thing to note about this tutorial that I'm going to be working on is that it works for pretty much anything. It won't be Toon Boom specific. This will work for Flash, it'll work for Photoshop, it'll work for Clip Studio, it'll work for Toon Boom, it'll work for Moho, etc. It'll even work if you're doing it hand-drawn with pencil and paper and you're just flipping between the things. You remember those fliporamas from the Captain Underpants? Same principle. Alright, so I'm going to just start by just making a little bit of an animation here. Also, I am very glad that I'm going to be building a new PC as soon as the last of my parts arrive, because my PC fan has gotten kind of loud. I gotta really figure out what I want to draw first. So, basically the way I'm planning on doing this tutorial is I'm planning on basically covering a bunch of bullet points. Because a lot of people have this there's a bunch of misconceptions when it comes to smooth animation, where people think that A, because something is high frame rate, that it's automatically smoother, and B, that if it's animated in ones, it's going to be smooth. And neither of those are true. Having something animated at a higher frame rate can help if it is already smooth, and will make it look even smoother. But if it is not already smooth, it'll wind up looking like shit, and will wind up looking even jankier than normal. So the first principle that I have in terms of the tutorial is going to be make sure your frames are prioritized. You're not just like trying to put in too many unimportant frames first off. You want to make sure that the frames that you do work with are very important and are very clear. Then, let's see. So, right here we have a clear animation going on. Raises a sword, slashes, this kind of recoils, retracts a bit. Then what you want to do, start thinking about weight. So with weight, that's where stuff will kind of like anticipate up. Things will kind of move a little bit, shift as if they're getting ready to spring. So like in this. Just like that. Alright, so here I have four major keyframes, and then I have a few, I guess they're still technically keyframes, but they're just basically small variations to the existing keyframes that provide me with a little bit of more of a sense of weight. It's kind of the key place to start. Much of a turn. Play this back slowly. As you can see, this is already starting to look like a fluid animation and stuff. You can actually see this isn't even with any in-betweens or anything. This is just a bit of smearing and things like that. And it's already starting to look pretty consistent and pretty glib. Now granted, this is still just a rough sketch, because the most important thing that you can do is plan out your animation before you actually try to animate it. I see many people, they start with the first frame, and they draw a full character here. And then they go to the next frame, and they draw a full character here, and then they realize it's not lining up or anything, and the motion doesn't work out. That's not good either. Don't do that. Let's see. Okay, that actually works at 8 frames per second. Let's bump this up to 24 frames per second and actually space this out. Let's see. Let's see, 30 frames. Look, that's completely legible, and you can see what's going on there. Oh, and also just as a comment, to the aside, I am building a i7 or an i7 7700K. I've already got a 1070 GPU in my current PC, which I'm going to be moving over. So, it's basically just a major processor upgrade overall, and a motherboard upgrade because my motherboard CPU is old as shit. I'm running a 960 at the moment. And it served me well, but it's starting to show its age. Let's see. By the way, I might go silent here and there and stuff. I'm largely just getting, again, I'm largely just getting footage for the next tutorial video. I'll try to explain it as I kind of go along in like a live lesson kind of way. So then, once you have everything planned out, then you can start actually drawing the character.
Nurse, we need to perform an immediate jazzer section.
Oh, this is hard.
His kidneys aren't funky enough.
And the interesting thing is that this actually works for both frame by frame and with rigged stuff. I'm going to start with rigged just because I'm familiar with it. And again, I'm going to make sure that this stays consistent for both Flash and Toon Boom. So you don't have to worry if you don't use Toon Boom.
What's my jam? What's my move jam?
And what does that accomplish, huh? We're gonna have fun at the party tonight. Playing goddamn checkers.
What's my jam? What's my move jam?
And what does that accomplish? Nothing. Come on, baby. Give me lovin', come on. Gather round the corner, half a mile from here. See that long train run, and I want it to disappear. Down left, dead left, where we're jumping now.
It's fucking checkers.
What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers. What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers.
Alright, so what I'm doing right here is I'm just puppeting this out.
Oh.
I'm gonna touch you where you don't want. Then you can't sue me. You're gonna jump over my head, come on. If you do, you might be dead, come on.
Oh.
I'm gonna touch you where you don't want. Then you can't sue me. Gather round the corner, half a mile from here. See that long train run, and I want it to disappear.
And red is really hard to see. I'm going to change this color.
It's fucking checkers.
What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers. What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers. Boom fucking jams. Boom fucking jams. Boom fucking jams. Boom fucking jams. Love the way you touch my people, yeah. Love the way you touch my poo-poo, yeah. Got a big, huge dick in my mouth tonight. Gonna fuck a dude, gonna fuck a dude. Gonna help my bros get into the base, come on. Sitting in the holes, getting all excited. I'm so horny I can fuck a dude, but I won't cause I don't like
So, what's been new with you guys today?
Gotta pee about now. Gotta poo about now. Alright about now.
It's fucking checkers.
What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers. What you think about the situation? What you think about the situation, baby? About the checkers.
Probably some of your best work.
Thanks. It was the heat of the moment. Come on, telling me what my heart meant. It was the heat of the moment. Come on, you can see my heart breaking. Come on, hearts on fire, strong desire.
Alright, so this part I am adding in pegs, and while pegs are unique to Flash, do note that this still works, they're unique to Toon Boom. Still note that as long as I'm not parenting anything, this will still work identical to how it does in Flash. I'm going to just place these. These will basically just be similar to the anchor points as you see in Flash. So I'll be sure to clarify that in the tutorial itself. Alpha on the black line so I can see this better. This is, again, just meant to give the basic idea. I'm going to set this to motion keyframes. Keyframe there. Alright, so I'm going to go to the first frame here, and everything kind of like anticipates. I'm just going to move these, just like I would in Flash. Gotta put this in stop motion. By the way, if you guys have any questions about animation and stuff as I'm working on this, feel free to fire away, because I might be able to answer them on the spot, or I might be able to incorporate them into the tutorial. Why does it keep making these, like... Have stop motion keyframes turned on? Okay. This is where things get interesting. Because if you were working in Flash for this one, you would have to actually rearrange the layers on this. Because I'm in Toon Boom, I can just move these parts forward. Won't notice it until I actually fill these in. screen spinning for a moment. Ooh, don't want to recut. I feel really bad about drawing in-betweens when I'm not supposed to. Yes, that is actually one issue that does screw up a lot of animators. So don't feel too bad about it, but it is a common mistake. When is the appropriate time and place for tweening? The issue isn't when to tween, it's how you tween, and I will get into that. So, have no fear. And for motion blurs, I will be covering that as well. That's a very important aspect, actually. So. Those shall all be covered. Sometimes Toon Boom's controls still are wonky. You might notice that I'm actually doing a partial frame by frame for this as well, and I will go into why in a little bit. I'm not trying to make this perfect just because I largely just want to get this made up for an example. The focus on the smoothness should be on the motions, not on necessarily the quality of the artwork. Alright, so now watch the animation when it's rigged. You might notice that I don't have the motion blur. It's actually technically called the smearing. But as you can see, this is looking a lot smoother, despite the fact that there are no tweens yet. Even though this is rigged, there are no tweens in this animation at all. And yet it still looks really smooth. So, because I do want to cover tweening, however, the important thing is to use tweens correctly. So let's start with the anticipation. When he goes from his resting pose to starting to react to flicking into his ready stance. What I'm going to do, I'm going to apply a tween here. Now this is just a linear tween, so this looks unnatural. It looks like, oh, he's a robot moving into position We don't want that. Before I go on and tween anything else, I'm going to apply what's called easing. So easing this with a ease in will make it so that way he kind of accelerates. Looks a little bit okay. To be honest, I wouldn't really want to use a tween for the entirety of this animation here. I'd more want to do it for right here. I mean this part. That way he kind of freezes in place for a little bit. Now let's try tweening this and see how this works. Because it's only going to be one frame that winds up going through, because you can get a lot done in a short amount of times. That actually looks okay, so that one we can leave as a straight linear tween. Now for this one, he's going into the ready stance. So I'm going to make it so that way this tween is a ease out. Kind of like he's drifting into position. That looks okay. What I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to move these keyframes back a little bit. And now I am not going to tween this part here, because I don't want... I want this transition to be lightning fast, because it's a very quick motion. I'm just going to tween the latter parts of it, like so. Actually, I'll show you what happens when you do tween this stuff, just to demonstrate. Look at that. What the hell is going on there? This is why tweening constantly is not always useful. However, it does mean that in a few cases we can get rid of a few unnecessary tweens. So I'm going to do that. Notice how the animation barely changed at all when I deleted those. I'm going to set these to an ease out. And now let's try tweening this. Let's see how this looks. It looks rough, but I think we can save it. Actually, I don't think tweening it would be the best way to go. This, however, we can tween, for sure. Alright, so now let's look at how this looks with tweens. Notice how it looks smooth despite the fact that there are these rapid transitions in place. So this all would translate as well to Flash, identically, one for one. The only difference would be you would be using the animation data itself instead of the pegs, and you could also move the layers around. So yeah, you can see how that works. Oops. Let's hide this one. And let's get a new song going. Alright, I'm going to move this animation back a little bit. That way I can do a bit of a transition. Oops. So this is where in-betweens start coming into place. On. what we want to do here is we want to try and get an in-between. Come on. Sometimes onion skins are really obnoxious. I want the chest to move about the 50% mark. I want the arm to start swinging back. This is why onion skinning is important. We want to get it between the two phantom images that we have. And just increment everything by 1 and do the same thing. For the head, I'm just going to tween it. For the chest, I'm also going to tween it because those are simple enough to where we can get away with that. Our back shoulder is a little bit trickier. Let's actually draw a new arm. That's starting to look fairly smooth. But I think we can do it a little better. And the thing is, onion skinning is a checking tool, so you absolutely should use it to check. Because that's how it's meant to be used. Yeah, as you can see, that is how you make basically a smooth animation using rigs. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all this and I'm going to hide it and do something similar with just a traditional, more traditional method. I don't do a lot of frame-by-frame animation, or hand-drawn frame-by-frame anyway. However, I'm still going to demonstrate how this works. So you got your character. Important thing with frame by frame, especially, is to make sure that your drawings are consistent. With rig stuff, if something's inconsistent, you can just reposition it. Frame by frame, it usually means you have to redraw the entire thing, or at least parts of it. And that's not fun. Nobody wants to redraw things. So, make sure that your drawings are consistent. Alright. So here's the first frame. And again, I'm not gonna fully flesh these out or anything. This is just for demonstration purposes. It works though it's a similar process to the doing the keyframes and everything. Once you have this part, once you have the basic motions done, this is when you come in and you start actually drawing out your character. Honestly, just imagine that I have this character fully drawn, like fully colored as well, because that's where it would come into place. Alright, if you're gonna stand, you're gonna go into the timeout box. I'll be honest, I get a little bit concerned over how many, like, kids follow me and stuff, considering that I am not a child-safe artist. Alright, so I'm gonna cover a concept early here, because I was gonna cover motion blurring and smearing in a bit. But one thing to note about motion blurs and smearing is that, especially with frame-by-frame stuff, you can actually draw them right into the frame themselves. That's one advantage of them. Whereas with rig stuff, usually the rigs won't contain pre-built smears. One other nice thing is that frame by frame, if something is obscured, you don't have to draw it. Some would be on the inside. I'm going to skip the one in between that I had there, because that was a bit of a preemptive one on my part. The premature in between. Thank you. Etna is one of my favorite characters from a video game. happened to... Oh, the frames disappeared from the rep. Huh. You know, I just realized I forgot to press record on OBS. Oh well, I'll just download it when it's done. One thing fun about frame-by-frame stuff is that you can actually add in more details, things that you wouldn't otherwise, like a personal flair. It's easier to get more complicated angles done with frame-by-frame as well. You don't have to redraw an entire rig angle. But to save time, you oftentimes want to just rely on things like distortion and things like that to make things easier for yourself instead of having to redraw a bunch of frames, because every frame has to count when you're doing frame by frame. Every frame should count normally, at least keyframes. But with frame by frame, it's especially important because otherwise it's a lot of extra work. Like these two frames right here, these technically can be the same one and I can just deform it. In fact, I'm actually going to add a pig onto this so that way I can demonstrate what I mean. Imagine that this is basically a symbol in Flash. Instead of doing that, I would have slight compression here. That gives about the same effect. And then this is where we start worrying about in-betweens. I'm going to turn on onion skinning because onion skinning is extra important for drawing the in-betweens. And I'm just going to try and line this up between frames. Start decreasing the degree of smearing. And there we go. Now here's where a complicated in-between comes in, one that we have to completely redraw. Keep in mind as well, this isn't a tutorial about frame-by-frame versus rig stuff. This is more showing that, hey, these principles apply to both types of animation. I mean, as mentioned, this tutorial will also work for stuff drawn on pen and paper. One thing interesting though about frame by frame is that it actually does give you a chance to kind of look at how the secondary motions of in-betweens work. Like, you wouldn't have seen this before on the rig version, but the hand is starting to open here in the frame by frame version. Keep in mind that Studio Trigger also is, because it's in Japan, they have a lot of tools built around frame by frame stuff and hand-drawn stuff, because that's largely how the industry standard is. All the animation that they do is raster based. That's assuming it's digital, though a lot of it's also inks. And that's just kind of the norm for the industry there. Whereas here, we've been focusing on, in the US, Americans have been focusing on ways to make animation more efficient, so that way more people can get done, or more people can get more done with fewer hands having to participate. Right, again here, we can have another distortion going on. Move that there. And let's look at the animation. Why does it select both? Come on. Yeah, that's a frame-by-frame animation there. Now just imagine that this is all colored out and everything, and it's all fully drawn and rendered as a character. But, same basic idea. You start with your core keyframes, and then you just do reliable in-betweens. And you have to make sure that those core frames, those core keyframes, are absolutely essential. And B's making a very dangerous statement there, because you're basically implying that Western animators aren't talented either, which is absolutely false. Usually, if you're noticing notions like that, you're only looking at the surface level of animation, you're not looking at what's going into it. But anyway, back on topic. As you can see, this is a frame-by-frame animation. Let's compare it to the rigged animation. Now the rigged one is missing one thing that I have done before already. It's missing this thing called a smear, but that's easy to add. I'm going to add that. Something I actually kind of want to do here. I'm going to start adding a bit of an in-between. I'm going to add just one frame of this frame by frame component to a rigged thing, because I do that often. I mix the two. Try and get the best of both worlds. You're on the Game Grumps as robots? I have not. Alright, so here's our rigged animation again. Now let's add in the smearing. So smearing, pretty easy actually. Well, easy to direct, it's kind of annoying to draw. I don't like drawing smearing, though I need to use it more. But the basic idea is you take the path of a fast motion, so in this case like that, and you basically just kind of draw it out as if you are stretching the components out around around the path of motion. So like there would be one element of the smear, there'd be another frame connected to. And the smear kind of starts fading away the smaller the animation gets. Sometimes the smear might just be a few little wavy, sharp bits here and there. And you can also even smear a few other elements, such as this. And smear the sword and the arm going back. Kind of funny because I didn't change a lot with the motion itself other than adding in that one other in-between frame. But this looks a hell of a lot more smooth now that there is a motion blur applied. Oh, that transition on the arm is a little on the rough side. One advantage of tween stuff, though, is that you can play a lot more with the recoil and things like that a lot easier. So if you want to add in recoil and stuff, you don't have to draw additional frames, and you can make secondary motions a lot simpler and a lot faster. Whereas with hand-drawn stuff, you have to make sure you add in frames for that kind of thing. But you can also be a little bit more attentive of them. You can see that this isn't playing back as high of an overall frame rate because it's animated mostly in 2s, but it still looks smooth. Whereas this looks a bit smoother because it's naturally smooth, but it's also technically animated in 1s. So it's kind of a give or take and stuff. If the animation was not smooth, like it had what I call wobble, like I'm going to give an example. I'm going to move the chess piece off a little bit so the motions don't make sense. See, you really start to notice when things kind of get off in the timing and things like that. So it's very important that if you're going to be animating in 1s, especially if you're using tweens, that they're strong and that that they stay consistent overall. One thing you can also do to help keep an eye on this is, with onion skinning on, just scrub through the frames one at a time and try to look for areas when there's a transition that the current frame is between the preceding and proceeding frames. Like right here, this is a very sharp transition. So if I wanted to, I could actually extend this out a little bit more to make it smoother, but I want this to be fast. In fact, it's so fast that I'm going to add in a subtle motion blur. actually going to change this frame to that one. And let's change this frame to that one. See, because I was scrubbing through these, I was able to notice the head is coming detached here. That's not right. I'm going to change this to that frame, and I'm going to move it up a bit. I'm going to change this one, so that way it changes preemptively. If you're having things like symbols and stuff where they have nested frames, you want those frames to try and change during points of motion, usually. Sometimes they can change during other situations and stuff, but usually during motion is when they're going to be most vulnerable. So this is a little bit far forward, so I'm going to move it back a little. Stays a little bit closer because, as you can see, this is a little bit favoring wrong stuff. And I'm going to have this come out a little bit more. I'm actually going to draw a new frame here. Added a whole bunch of new music to my playlist. Let me find out where it is. Here we go. Yeah, as you can see, here is the finalized animation for the rig stuff, and here's the finalized animation for the frame-by-frame stuff. So the way you'd make this smoother then, if you want to go even further, is you would start just adding in more in-betweens. And you can cheat it a little bit, make them a little sloppy if you desperately need to. But the nice thing is that you can see exactly where you need to make these in-betweens and stuff, and they don't get covered up by using tweens. Even sometimes just one frame can be enough to smooth things out. God, I love the Domino soundtrack. One other thing about consistency again, just because consistency is probably the most important thing if you're trying to get smooth animation. Notice on the head, the line thickness is fluctuating. You would want to make sure that you're keeping that consistent, that you're not changing it up a lot, especially frame by frame. You wouldn't have to worry about it as much again with rig stuff because you'd be using the same parts here and there. Yeah, so just to run through the core bullet points again. You don't need to animate on ones all the time. You need to learn how to prioritize the frames you want to use, and the most important ones. Don't try to make everything important. Add a sense of weight. So anticipation, recoil, follow through, overshoot, etc. Learn how to distort things, such as smearing, stretching a part out, etc. Learn how to scrub. Make sure you scrub through your animations and stuff to make sure that things stay consistent. And you don't need to keep everything in constant motion. Sometimes you can have an overall motion for everything. Sometimes you might just have some stuff that's planted in place, like during a walk cycle. While the legs are moving and stuff, oftentimes the feet will stay in place for the most part, for at least a portion of the cycle. That said, you don't want like the entire leg to completely freeze while the other legs walk and stuff, otherwise you get something that looks like it's out of those weird bootleg Dinosaurio games that were for like the Philips CDI or whatever. But yeah. God, I love this song. Yeah. I will be putting these all into tutorial soon. So, I look forward to that. Something I'm also going to just demonstrate really quick. I'm going to turn this all into 2s. Whoa. What the hell happened there? Okay, that didn't work. Bad day. In Flash, you would probably have a better time with that, but sometimes keeping everything just in 2s can also be a completely viable strategy and can also look pretty good. I'm going to cut the recording here because I think that should be enough material. I'll probably grab a few other things like sample animations and see if anybody else can share me animations they don't feel confident with, they want me to critique. And I can use that as kind of examples of how to go over things and stuff like that. Oh god, why would you do that to yourself? That's not animating intense, that's just storyboarding at that point. Let's see. Alright, I'm trying to figure out if I want to stream some other stuff. I don't really have any ideas on what to work on. Oh, one thing that's cool. I'm going to be getting a new monitor soon. It'll be a ultra-wide 21:9 monitor, so I will have a shit ton of space on my screen. So much space that you guys won't be able to see it all. But it will be nice. I'll be able to have a full screen essentially dedicated to just the nodes, as well as to the drawing space, without having to scrunch everything up like this. Alright. Who wants to see me doodle a Shantae? Oh, one other thing I actually forgot to cover. If you want to animate boobs, learn how to use squash and stretch. The basic idea behind squash and stretch is let's see. As something moves up, it gets longer and thinner. And then as it kind of comes to a stop, it will kind of squash and get flatter and fatter. And then we'll kind of oscillate between these until it kind of returns to normal. Slow this down a little bit. Motions will also get slower as time goes on. You'll have more spacing on the frames. Start having oscillations that are ease both. So yeah, that's a little quick sample of squash stretch. Out more. Much. Yeah, that's just kind of a little quick sample of how squash and stretch works, because I forgot to cover that, and I meant to cover it, and I didn't, and I feel bad. Feel bad! Alright, so I'm gonna animate a bit of Shantae. Because I can. Not strong enough. Why is it not? Okay. Why is it not doing this? Why is it not working? Okay, now it's working.
There's a spark in your eye and a grin on your lips. She's a demon and I can't resist her on a night like this. Say that you're fine, but I know that you're a wreck. There's a chill up my spine with your hands around my neck.
You can tweet the animation at me. If you're on my Discord server, you can also send it to me through there. I'd appreciate any animations that people want to send me where they've tried to make them, especially if they've tried to make them smooth, but they weren't able to make them smooth. Like they feel like they're choppy. Specifically, that's what the tutorial is going to be covering. It's choppy. I just realized this is about in beat to the song. If you can just post it as a GIF, that'd be easiest. Doing it in Twitter, well, unfortunately, will compress it to a video, which I can't download. GIFs are easiest because I can actually just download them, though. So if you're on the Discord, that's the easiest way to send it. Just post it in in the Your Stuff channel.
this sound, Aaron? Please.
Do you like it? We should make a remix
No.
of it.
Flying along at the speed of knuckles. What the fuck is going on?
It's awesome.
Flying along at the speed of knuckles. What the fuck is going on? Dude, you dropped 1,000 feet. That was fucking banana peels, dude. That does not look like where you're supposed to be.
You just keep going. You just keep on going.
Bring your hands down, bring your hands down.
Now I got the rhythm. Yo, I'm like Marky Mark. I got the rhythm and the rhyme.
Bring your hands down, bring your hands down. The electricity.
You just choose knuckles and you jump, bang, pause it.
Alrighty. A little bit of magic here.
What the fuck is going on?
It's awesome.
Flying along at the speed of knuckles. What the fuck is going on? Dude, you dropped 1,000 feet. That was fucking banana peels, dude. That does not look like where you're supposed to be.
You just keep going. You just keep on going.
Oh, what the fuck happened there?
Now I got the rhythm. Yo, I'm like Marky Mark. I got the rhythm and the rhyme.
Bring your hands down, bring your hands down. The electricity.
You just choose knuckles and you jump, bang, pause it. And then you go out and you can keep doing it forever. You can just keep doing it forever.
Oh, I know what I did. Wait, no, I didn't do that wrong. What's going on here? Well, I tried to be crafty. Didn't work. Luckily, this is just a rough sketch. It's not even that big of a deal. If you look in the description of the video, there's actually a public Discord you can get access to as well. No, you see, here's the thing, one guy. The reason why pronouncing it GIF is great is because it allows you to make the pun, choosy web developers choose GIFs. Which is part of the reason why the creator wanted to use the word GIF. Here's actually another concept that I want to talk about, actually, because I forgot to cover it in the tutorial. It's something I call wobble. Look at the leg right here, specifically her left thigh, viewer's right. Notice how it kind of accelerates to a stop there, and then suddenly it snaps into place there? That's something that is caused by bad easing. And that's also something called wobble. You can fix that manually, or you can adjust the easing to try and deal with it. What I want to do here is I want to make sure that it kind of accelerates out instead of in. And there we go. Now the wobble is removed. Mostly. Okay, there still is a little bit of issue. This is where things get tricky. Because the wobble is occurring when this thing loops now, and that's the hardest to solve. Think of it. Uneased would probably be best for this case. There we go. Alright, and one other thing I want to add. Ponytail. So, front part is it's a sketch. Out. Going down. Oh, right, that's the titty. Alright. I'm actually gonna quick recolor this. Alright, I'm gonna wrap this up here. And I'm gonna get going. Good night, everybody. I'm gonna get started on the tutorial stuff, and I will download these pics and vids that you guys have sent me. Thank you for the material. I will use this in the tutorial. Alright, good night, everybody.